Champions League final time. Let's get to previewing. As always in the beginning, we have to analyze, well, how things are usually going to go, right? The trends, the easy part, I guess. It's kind of starting in opening that initial skin to start delving deeper and deeper into what's been. And of course, if you look at it from that instance and that instance alone, it makes it very easy to say Real Madrid are the overwhelming favorites. And maybe in recent years, we might not have seen such an even or such an overwhelmingly tilted scale over with one team over another. That's for sure. I can tell you that. No doubt about it in my mind. Now, the biggest issue that one can have is that you don't know what you don't know. Because the question I've always had, and I've always had it ever since this run was being made by Dortmund, which Dortmund is going to show up? Now, more often than not in this Champions League, we've seen a Dortmund side that has gone and it has been consistent in terms of their performance. We know what they're going to do. Now, is it the Dortmund of old? No, it's not. It's a definite far cry from it. But it is a very vertical Dortmund side that can offer some interesting notions and can offer some interesting problems to Real Madrid. Now, how interesting? Well, that depends. I mean, again, we've seen a Dortmund side throughout this latter stage of the season that has improved significantly. Now, it doesn't mean that they can drop back to their form. And keep in mind, they haven't played a lot over the past couple of weeks. They haven't played at all in the past couple of weeks. Maybe a couple of scrimmages and things of that nature to kind of keep the wheels still greased up to be able to come in at the best possible moment. They are well rested, so that is going to help them. Real Madrid are still slightly well rested because there's been the ability to rotate players. There's been the possibility of bringing players in and out. They've been a more festive mood ever since they conquered the league title, ever since they qualified for the Champions League title. So both teams come in, well, in terms of what the month of May going into June would be in terms of a football calendar, they come in relatively well rested. Relatively. So within the context of football, in context of a football calendar, as I said before, in the month of May, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty well rested. I mean, Dortmund haven't played, as I said before, in a couple of weeks. To be more exact, they haven't played since May 18th when they played Darmstadt. So that can end up helping them recover some of the players that have had some nicks, some niggles, things of that nature that can help them have a better or more available squad, a deeper squad, a team that can have better substitutes going in certain situations for Edin Terzic. Okay, all that being said and done, that's very good. All that being said and done ends up being very vital. But what about Real Madrid? Well, Real Madrid, like I said, they've been festive. They have about a week or so, which is still fine, still good enough. Oh, a week from the time that they last played to the Champions League final. That's still relatively good enough for them to. And keep in mind, if you start seeing what Real Madrid were able to field on their last match, it was a scoreless draw. That, well, it was, like I said, more festive than anything else. Real Madrid were festive as well against Villarreal. They ended up drawing 4-4. It didn't matter at that point. For them, it was being able to scrounge up points. The big question is, well, or not even question anymore, is how good will Thibaut Courtois be in goal? When he, of course, a player that's still getting back into the fray. I'm not saying that it's a bad addition. I'm just saying that from a playing standpoint, how in terms of his form will he be when it comes time to have to be in goal in a Champions League final? I'm not doubting him in any way, shape, or form in his abilities. I'm just doubting his present form to be. But then again, at the same time, when you start looking at it, he did lose his position due to injury. He shouldn't be able to lose his position due to injury. And he shouldn't lose his starting role in terms of injury. So in terms of that, I really... There's just a doubt that I have. That's all. I mean, for the most part, it's a team that was able to play very well most of the starters. It was Courtois, Nacho, Carvajal, Rudiger, Mendy, Kroos. Of course, Kroos was given his tribute on that day. Valverde, Camavinga, Bellingham, Vinicius, Rodrigo. Basically, a starting lineup. So it's still kind of okay. Fine, let's 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week on, 1 week off, just to be able to keep the not only the freshness but also keep the continuity going, keep the play going, keep players still with some, so no rust starts accumulating. I guess that's the best way to say it. And to be honest with you, that it might be the best way to go. In terms of matchups, which will be kind of interesting to look at, and of course, with both teams, you have to go all the way back to the Champions League semis. And with Real Madrid, I think it's basically what you see is what you get. It doesn't mean it's not diminutive. It's just the players offer you X, Y, and Z, and that's exactly what they do. And okay, how do you deal with it? That's the big issue. How do you deal with Real Madrid or with the Real Madrid players? Because they look done and dusted at a certain point in the return leg against Bayern. Bayern are winning. Bayern had things relatively under control, and then everything just fell apart. Now, Dortmund has to learn those lessons and understand, okay, if we're ahead 1-0, what do we have to do to control the situation? And I think, and I've said it before, maybe controlling the situation is not the best thing. It's maybe the second or third best thing you can do, because it's easy for me to say it watching the game. Oh, no, but they have to go and go for a second goal. Yeah, they do. But when there's a certain level of fatigue, when certain players start to feel the knocks and pings of the season, when you start to feel the intensity of the situation that starts to bog you down even more, okay, we can't do it. So what else can we do? All right, this. All right, that. That's where Edin Terzic has to start to determine how to prioritize the game. Because with Real Madrid, a 1-0 advantage is very slim. One play, one situation, one moment of brilliance can change things very quickly, and they do have those, especially towards the tail end of a match. I mean, Real Madrid were one of the teams that led the Champions League in terms of goals in the final minutes, and they found a way. Now you can go, and I know there's going to be a lot of people saying, "Oh, but VAR, oh, but yeah, okay, fine, that's valid when you say it." But you still have to score. You still have to create the opportunity. You still have to do a bunch of things in order to be put in a position to. Now, if there's a controversial moment, trust me, I'll call it out. I'll say, hey, this was it, this was that. And I did against Bayern. There were certain things about that match that I wasn't 100% convinced about. But for Real Madrid to score a goal, they have to go and shoot. For Real Madrid to score a goal, they have to create the opportunity. So all these things do have to, there's something to it. And that's what Dortmund need to minimize. And not only just minimize throughout 70 minutes, you have to go to the 85th, to the 90th, and sometimes to the 97th, and making sure that's minimized, that's retained, that's contained as much as possible. So what tactical adjustments do you make on the fly in order to prevent that from happening? That's going to be the biggest issue that Dortmund's going to have. Now, we're talking about one of the better defensive teams in the Champions League in Dortmund that were able to really shut down teams, that were able to really... look how they got the semis. They neutralized Kylian Mbappé. No goals in 180-plus minutes. So that tells you a great deal of what Dortmund is capable of doing defensively. So let's start there. How do they do it against Real Madrid? That's going to be interesting, because obviously if you go Rodrigo and with Vinicius, they open you up wide, Bellingham in the middle. Maybe you have, who expected, as I said before in my recap video, talking about Joselu coming in and being the hero for Real Madrid. Well, all that has to be kept in mind. There's certain scenarios that Edin Terzic has to keep in mind. Okay, how do I play with this backline of 4? How do I play with this backline of this? How do I do it how does my backline have to comport itself when so-and-so has the ball? How do we rotate? All of these things have to be kept in mind when looking at this Real Madrid side, when looking at what they have to do. Now, am I saying that Real Madrid are the only team that's going to be able to attack? No. Real Madrid also have to keep in mind that sometimes if they push up a little too much, a deep ball that's sent in, and Nicholas Fulkrug or Jadon Sancho, whoever recover those balls, they can really create some interesting opportunities if they find themselves wrong-footed. And they can find Real Madrid wrong-footed a lot of times. Now, it's their ability to drop back collectively that helps them also as well. So let's also not forget that little caveat there, because that's what ends up making this match so compelling. And now, of course, you end up saying, well, yeah, Real Madrid's going to win. I'd say that they are, but you still have to play the match. The what seems evident for many, but the how still finds its way. And of course, we always get intrigued with the how. And it can be an outside shot from Valverde. It can be those, and in these types of matches, those wild cards end up being those outside factors, if you will, those protagonists that end up being protagonists that usually aren't the main protagonists, end up being the ones that end up making a difference. And that's why I always like to see, okay, we've covered Vinicius, we've covered Nicholas Fulkrug, we've covered Rodrigo and Jude Bellingham. Yeah, those are the ones that are expected to. But who can come in and all of a sudden make a difference? Just their contribution ends up making the difference for whatever side. That's where I really enjoy. Is it going to be an Adeyemi? Is it going to be Julian Brandt? Julian Brandt's going to have his work cut out in the middle, because he's going to have to deal with the pressure of Camavinga, with the pressure of Valverde trying to take the ball away from him. Who's going to associate with him? And that's where Jadon Sancho, and of course, look, I'm going to skip over Jadon Sancho and Bellingham. I'll leave that towards the end, because that's the easy part, talking about what those players can do. That's easy. Everybody knows what they can do. Everyone expects them to have a great game. Everybody requires them to have a great game for their respective teams to win, or have a chance to win. So you start looking at the Adeyemis, you start looking at the Matsens, you start looking at the Riersens, you start looking at those types of players. You start looking at maybe a Slaughterbeck sending a deep ball in and finding, how does Fulkrug get the ball? Slaughterbeck sending a ball where you end up seeing the Real Madrid defense not knowing how to defend him, because he moves around between central defenders very well. He can go right through both central defenders. He has the physical qualities to be able to hold the ball, bring it down, give a second ball, and give some continuation to Dortmund if they're attacking. He is one of the reasons why there's the verticality that Dortmund offer ends up being such an important facet of their play, and has been such an important facet of their play in Champions League. So I like to go and look at that. I like to go and see the possibility of a Marcel Sabitzer being able to hold and control and be that first pass out in the midfield. I like that. I like the possibility of seeing, hey, you know what? This is what's done, and what's done well in terms of what Dortmund has been able to do. And all of those things have been done well. The fullbacks have attacked well. They've helped in the transition. They've helped in the defense. You see that block in the middle being able to really compress play. So how's Real Madrid going to deal with that going around the perimeter? How is Vinicius going to go? Because if there's one thing, remember, there was one thing that Dortmund did very well against PSG in the semis, which was to, whenever they forced Kylian Mbappe to go out wide, he had to get the ball. There was no one to really give a return ball to. And when he did, he'd have two players run with him. They didn't even look at where the ball was. They looked at him and they ran with him, so that return ball would never come to him square, or it would come to him clean. That might be another formula that Dortmund look to use whenever Vinicius has the ball. You'll have Rierson over on the right, and then maybe Sabitzer shadowing, just so that return balls has someone already there that's accountable for whoever goes forward. Whenever Mendy starts to run down that left-hand side, okay, Mendy already has someone that's keeping tabs on him. And of course, in the middle, you might end up seeing Mats Hummels ending up going out wide. There's a whole shift and a whole rotation that's done defensively that ends up helping out in terms of, okay, well, Vinicius does this. There's two players that are there just making sure that he either runs all the way to the byline and can't do much and ends up getting pinned, or that ball has to go backward. So he has to release the ball, send it back, and start all over again. Which is where Real Madrid can really find themselves in problems. If you see Vinicius having to run about 10, 15 meters and then turn, has to go back, unless Mendy starts to do an overlap or some type of underlap that ends up working out, that could be where the success lies with Real Madrid. Rodrigo, I mean, he's had a great season, but he could be the difference maker. Instead of, well, since that rotation go down the right, you can move it quick on the other end and then find Rodrigo maybe on a 1v1 or 2v1 in the opposite direction, because then you have coverage over on that side as well. So it could be interesting to see how quickly Real Madrid move the ball from one end to the other, where they will eventually find a 2v1. They have to start looking for those numerical superiority situations that can end up making the difference on one end or the other. That's one of them. When Dortmund are looking at what they're going to do, well, that ends up being something of note. That ends up being something interesting to start to delve into. To me, in all of this, and you're, well, yeah, you're just spitting out names. Yeah, I am. But there's one in particular that I haven't mentioned that could have a very pivotal role in all of this, and it's Dani Carvajal. Yeah, Dani Carvajal. I just mentioned part of it, which is Vinicius and Mendy over on the right, but then, of course, Dortmund trying to seal everything off there. If that quick ball movement ends up benefiting Real Madrid, or if they do it intelligently enough, you could end up finding a situation where Madsen's over on the left with Rodrigo, and then some type of movement with Carvajal going down that sector could end up opening things up for Real Madrid down the right-hand side. That could be. Either that, or there's some space where Valverde can shoot from outside. There's all of that needs to be included in this equation. Am I saying it's going to happen? No, but how you start to see the pieces moving around, that's where you say, this could be something that could be exploited. Now, easier said than done, because we know that Dortmund shift very well defensively. They can move from one end to the other, but Real Madrid can move the ball around quicker. That could be where things end up working out. We'll see. It's an interesting situation where there's certain scenarios, and of course, set pieces have been one of the dominant forces for Dortmund. So for them to be able to take advantage of at least one could be a major factor for them going and finding their second Champions League triumph in their history, which right now ends up being, now I'm only talking about not gambling sites, but odds makers, and have that a very tall task, an extremely tall task. And it would be great to be able to see, well, if I were a betting man, which I'm not, I would probably bet for Dortmund. I would probably go into that proposition that Dortmund would win. Now, do I sound crazy? Yeah. But sometimes you need to be crazy to win money. And I'm only talking about it from a money winning standpoint in this particular case. I'm too logical to be a good gambling person, so that's why I end up not making those types of bets. And I end up not making predictions because I suck at them. And I can tell you, hey, this could happen. This is where it can be exploited. This is where I'm Real Madrid. If this and this happen, if X and Y end up occurring, then of course this could end up, emerging. All of that needs to be said, and it has been so far. The midfield for Real Madrid will have a very tall task of trying to be the one that holds the ball. Maybe Luka Modric even comes in and becomes a factor. Well, I shouldn't say, Modric, no. Modric usually does end up orchestrating a little bit better. So do expect him to play either as a starter or coming in later on in the match. But he'll have a role of sorts when Madrid find themselves, whatever, they might need a conductor in the middle. And he's the one that is able to pull the strings a little bit better. Maybe. Or they need someone to kind of dictate a little bit more in the beginning of the game. He's the one that's in charge. And of course, he'll probably end up being higher up on the pitch and seeing where he ends up participating or ends up developing in all of this, which will be a very compelling case if that does happen. So again, with Real Madrid and Dortmund, there are a lot of X factors that need to be emerging, that need to find themselves. And to me, that's the most compelling part of this, is which one of those unsung heroes ends up developing into the hero of the day in terms of this Champions League final, because the possibility is there for any of them to emerge in such a case. So we shall see how things play out. We shall see how things end up. We shall see what this Champions League final brings us, because it does have a potential to be an exciting one, despite it, in theory, being one of the more lopsided ones we've seen in recent years. So with that, I bid you adieu, ladies and gentlemen. Best of luck. I hope that everything goes well with you, and more importantly, that your team ends up being the one that gets crowned over at Wembley on Saturday. Until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Make sure you follow, you do everything that you need to do, as I look forward to being able to give you a recap, giving you more comments, and of course, I'll be on Sportsmax talking about Champions League in the coming days. Make sure you don't miss that, especially if you're in the Caribbean. And if you do, I'll probably have an excerpt or so of what I said during these live spots that I've done over at Sportsmax. So, again, you'll have everything covered here. And, of course, coming up, Copa America. Oh, Copa America previews begin this coming week. Libertadores group recap will come. Of course, Libertadores, in terms of the groups and how they came out, the pairings for the knockout stages, Sudamericana and how that ends up pairing out, all of that. I have a couple of interviews already getting lined up as we'll start the podcast version of this channel up and running, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We'll have a lot of Copa America. Hopefully, we can do some Copa America commentary here as well. So I'll talk to you very soon. Until next time, like I said before, ciao.